This is Super Sansqueamish again with another Sonic Lost World stage review. We're nearing the end of our Sonic stage reviews, at least from Sonic Lost World, and we'll be focusing on, or I guess, reviewing Lava Mountain Zone 3, the last actual stage out of all of the zones, and in particular, the Lava Mountain area, which is the last set of stages in Sonic Lost World. As we've mentioned before in the other Lava Mountain stages, they're not really stages. What we do here is we play through a Sonic stage and we review it, whether it be a boss fight, level, or maybe we'll get to do the special areas eventually. Who knows? We discuss the highlights, the gameplay, the experiences, and the overall Sonicness of the Sonic stage. Now, with that being said, this isn't really quite a stage, like I was about to mention. It's more or less a boss rush segment where we re-encounter all of the bosses that we faced prior, and then end with the final boss, which is going to be after this review. With that being said, I've already completed the game, not 100% due to the fact fans have other interests, I have other interests for myself, and, Metal Gear Solid exists. But without crossing the streams, we'll carry on. So before we get to the stage, the one thing I want to note about Lava Mountain Zone in general is, again, there isn't too many new additions to gameplay mechanics, actually none. We just rehash encounters that we've already had, but the aesthetic and the environment is completely different, allowing for a little bit of more appeal in the sense of visual entertainment as well as capturability. Things like screenshots or clips and recordings from the boss fights in general are a lot more appealing in this area. Whether it be just the lava or maybe the red and orange undertones, I don't know. With that being said, this review will be fairly short, but the upcoming boss fight, I have plenty to talk about. Without further ado, here's the stage.
This time I will hold nothing back. This time I will hold nothing back.
Okay, so I didn't mention it in the previous intro, but the two bosses that we reface in here are the guy that looks like a gnat or came out of Kung Fu Panda. We'll just call him Mushu Pork Fruit Guy. That's what my brain wants to say. Brain being semi-ironic and related to the upcoming video. With that being said, we also face Zor. I don't know why he's the only one I can remember the name of, even though they're mostly three-letter words. The boss fights are in the order of, well, Mushu Pork Fruit Guy, and then Zor on the dragon. Of course, can't forget the dragon that does laser somersaults. And anyways, this time around, Mushu Pork Fruit Guy tends to be the more challenging boss and less luck involved over the, sky falling and dodging lasers kind of mechanics that we face in Zor's battle. But I will say, as I mentioned before, the environment really made Mushu Pork Fruit Guy's encounter this time a lot more entertaining. I had a lot of fun dodging, and again, remembering the mechanics that I learned from the third try on my first fight with him, using the drill to get that sweet 75% health bar damage, much better than attempting to, well, as you've seen, not all of the fruit can be bounced back. And I tend to forget this with what looks to be the ugly fruit. And again, there isn't too much to say here, but for the sake of fans and this video, I will try and have something to discuss about. Refacing these two one after another didn't really change the experience or create much of a, new memory. Although I do find these two bosses to be the perfect parallels of each other. Mushu Pork Fruit Guy, I promise that's the last time I'll say that, maybe, tends to be, I think, the most fun out of all of them, outside of the challenge that comes with the upcoming boss, whether it be due to just his design or the mechanics, or the fact that if I were to rate them from hardest, he's probably second to last. Last being the hardest, due to the fact that sometimes the fruit just doesn't want to cooperate and the timer runs out. With that being said, it also, his cutscenes and his mustache all wrap up into creating a fun encounter every time. Although, it's kind of a nuisance. Moving on to Zor, I've only done this boss 3 times as well, I believe. And like I said, it's a little bit more luck-based. You don't know where the coins are going to be, so if you're not perfect with your dodging, your placement, or you slip up on the rotation of, dodging the lasers and trying to sit in between them like it's a pie slicer, you happen to just not have a coin when you need it. But the laser power comes in clutch, as always. Pardon. I was enjoying a little bit of a soda, a Super Saiyan Squeamish soda, if you will. Maybe. Without going off the rails too much, there is a Sonic-themed energy drink. Anyways, before you go down that rabbit hole, back to the stage. So, overall, I would say my opinions on these two haven't really varied too much. Again, it's a fairly lazy set of stages, although it's nice to encounter the bosses again if you're a fan. And I am kind of thankful that there wasn't like a rehash of the beginning stages where you run through and encounter them here and there and then fight them. That's more or less, a drag. So this tended to be overall a fairly enjoyable experience. A nice quick, no surprises end to, Sonic Lost World. But I would like to say that it did help me realize that the way you play this game really does add to the experience overall. You can kind of struggle through and take Mushu Pork Fruit Guy, for example. You can play it as slow as you want and finish right at the timer, or you can essentially get a 30-second victory, I'm sure. That being said, takes a little bit of skill check, if you will, and some challenge that, not quite a perfect run, but falls into that category of just being Sonic-y, which also really, although it takes a little bit more effort, really makes the game a heck of a lot more fun. I couldn't quite reach this point, or I guess level of enjoyment with the Zor fight. I don't know if that would be due to the fact that most of the, bonus points, or brownie points, if you will, come from the visual side on that. And the sky falling mechanic, it's fairly standard and kind of lame, but also, again, visually appealing. It builds into that immersion of course, Sonic can't zip around in the sky without Tails' supersonic powers. Or, well, maybe one day Sonic gets a jetpack. But you get the point. It's more of a visual experience rather than one of those experiences that is tied to how well you do. Now, with that being pointed out, I would like to say that these two bosses overall are probably my favorite, outside of course, the final boss and some of the other cutscenes that I guess added to the experiences of the other boss encounters. From a average standpoint of gameplay, visual appeal, and a little bit of thematics from the story, these two really are probably the shining lights out of the roster. Now, as we wrap this up, we'll get to how I would rate this. As a Sonic stage from a non-Sonic fan or player standpoint, judging from all of the Sonic games that I've played, witnessed, and etc., I would say, again, it being simply a boss rush stage, probably a 5 out of 10. Maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. But that's taking my personal opinion out of it, and I would think it's good at a 5 or a 6. Pardon, the bubbles are bubbling again. I would say getting to me, but anyways. Now, from a personal opinion, having played the stage only once, thankfully, due to the fact that they were encounters that I, obviously dealt with before. With that being said, I would put it at a 7, maybe even an 8 or a 9. Really indecisive on this one because it's difficult to rate them as they are together, one after another, and it's not separate encounters, as well as the fact that overall it's just fairly simple. But I had a lot of fun with it. I feel like in my Sonic history and overall experience of the ones that I've played out of boss fights, putting these two together creates, if you were to consider it as one, creates a fairly enjoyable experience for me personally. As I had mentioned, given the aesthetic appeal, the immersibility, and of course the lava background adding an aesthetic bonus, which is always nice. Now, if you're a Sonic fan, feel free to like, subscribe, or share for more. Or if you're a fan of my voice, whatever works. Share if you must, something like that. I get this part mixed up, but I'll get it right the second time. You can leave a comment, whether it be Sonic related to the gameplay. Did you notice any mistakes I made? Mistakes that you made? Flaws in the game itself? Or maybe there's just something funny you noticed. Or simply just a random comment, a request, or something community related, whether it be 6-7 brain rot, which we do try to keep to a minimum, or just, engaging with the invisible people. I'm sure people will comment at some point, although the Sonic fandom is scary. Moving on. If you're not a Sonic fan, the same thing applies. If you're a fan of my voice, which is kind of weird, feel free to like, subscribe, or share if you must for more. With that being said, you can leave a comment, whether it be related to the game itself, my commentary, something you noticed, highlights. Maybe you've played the game and you have something to share as well, whether it be Sonic related or not. I do try to keep the 6-7 brain rot to a minimum, but we are trying to build a community, although the Sonic fan base is kind of scary. With that being said, if you're a Sonic fan, have a Sonic day, and if you're not a Sonic fan, have a day, or whatever you will have. Without further ado, or without that being said, anyways, as always, Super Saiyan Squeamish